Welcome to World Device, the Federal's weekly program that tries to decode and make sense of international news. The Ukraine Russia war is challenging Indian foreign policy, its non alignment, and attempts to remain equidistant from the two warring nations. This is still a work in progress, and we do not know how it will end, and what will be the character of India's non aligned policy, etc. Whatever that might be, this is not the first time in independent India's history that the country's foreign policy is being tested. There have been at least five instances earlier that proved to be either a big challenge, a turning point, a success, or disastrous as far as India's foreign policy was concerned. Let's look briefly at these five instances. The first is India's 1962 war with China. This was a direct result of a failure to use diplomacy to sort out rising tensions over the demarcation of a borderline between the two countries, India and China. The diplomatic failure was particularly stark as the then Jawaharlal Nehru government was attempting to build an enduring relationship with China. The issue over the status of Tibet that had China on the edge proved to be the tipping point. Though it formally acquiesced to Chinese sovereignty over Tibet, India backed separatist Tibetan fighters and sheltered them, including the Dalai Lama. A strategic miscalculation by the Nehru government proved to be a major factor in triggering the war that ended in an Indian defeat. Ironically, India's then freshly minted policy of non alignment survived, despite New Delhi seeking help from the United States. As Nehru famously said, the ultimate purpose of non alignment was to serve India's national interest. It succeeded as the Soviet Union had its own tensions with China and did not mind the US helping India. The second instance is India's intervention in East Pakistan in 1971. Though technically not aligned to either superpower, geopolitics in South Asia dictated the actions of the then Indira Gandhi government. At this time, two big anti India shifts occurred in the region. China had moved closer to Pakistan, a process that had started after its 1962 war with India. And the US, for strategic and geopolitical reasons, had cozied up to China. This resulted in a Pakistan China US axis. India reacted swiftly, signing a 20-year friendship treaty with the Soviet Union. Backed politically by Moscow, the Indira Gandhi government intervened militarily in East Pakistan, which was fighting a war to secede from West Pakistan. Indian forces led the separatists to victory, enabling the emergence of Bangladesh. Though the US attempted to warn India against its intervention, the friendship treaty with the Soviets enabled a successful finish for New Delhi in the war. The third instance is India's Sri Lanka experience. Having involved itself through the 1980s in Sri Lanka's civil strife caused by the separatist Tamil movement for freedom, the then Rajiv Gandhi government signed the 1987 accord with Lankan President J. Jayawardene in Colombo. New Delhi followed up on the agreement by sending Indian peacekeeping forces to the strife-torn Tamil majority North and East Lanka, including the Jaffna Peninsula. A series of Indian misunderstandings with the LTTE leadership and resentment within a section of the Sinhalese majority derailed New Delhi's peace efforts. The LTTE and the Indian forces turned on each other, leading to a messy, sideways conflict that derailed the 1987 accord. 2 years later, when the VP Singh government came to power, the Indian peacekeepers were withdrawn in what is rated among the top misadventures in Indian foreign policy. The fourth instance was India's refusal to condemn Iraq's invasion of Kuwait in 1990. When Iraq invaded Kuwait in 1990, The then government in New Delhi did not explicitly state whether it supported or condemned the invasion. But symbolically, the Indian government appeared to back Iraq, confirmed by the then Foreign Minister I.K. Gujral controversially hugging Saddam Hussein during the visit to Baghdad a few weeks into the invasion. Gujral was the first and the only major foreign dignitary to visit Iraq at the time. Though India did ask Iraq to withdraw its forces at the United Nations, the absence of an explicit condemnation of the invasion outraged Kuwait. During the 7-month duration of the invasion from August 1990 through February 1991, Indian foreign policy formulators were in a dilemma. In this period, there were two prime ministers and three foreign ministers, and the external affairs mandarins misread the situation. They took the easy way out. A close friendship with Saddam Hussein and the Soviet Union's backing of Iraq prevented New Delhi from taking an independent view. Under the impression that Iraq's invasion of Kuwait was a permanent change, India focused more on ensuring the safety of around 180,000 of Indian citizens trapped in the war-torn country. It focused on getting all of them out using cordial relations with Saddam Hussein. But India's stance caused an outrage in the exiled Kuwaiti royal family, besides the US and Western capitals. So 1990 was a turning phase in world politics as the Soviet Union was sliding into disintegration. India, unfortunately, did not read the signs well enough. Eventually, the UN authorized a US led coalition to uh, wrest Kuwait back from Iraqi occupation. For India, which found itself on the wrong side, it turned out to be an embarrassing gaffe. It took a while for New Delhi to assuage those it had angered, including Kuwait. The only silver lining was that India acted in its own interest, used the cordial relationship with Saddam Hussein, and was able to rescue its people stranded in Kuwait. Number five, this is the fifth instance, losing control over India's neighborhood. Over the last 2 decades, a series of wrong moves by the Indian foreign policy establishment, complemented by the political leadership in New Delhi, has resulted in China gaining a strong foothold in the South Asian region. India today no longer has a comfortable relationship with any neighbor. The latest to move away from New Delhi's orbit has been Bangladesh, following the ouster of the Sheikh Hasina government. It is now having to contend with forces in that country inimical to Indian interests, led by the Bangladesh Nationalist Party and the Jamaat Islami. Relationship with Pakistan is all but frozen, of course. Of course, not that it had ever had normal ties with India for any extended period since 1947. But the real loss for India is Nepal, Sri Lanka, Maldives, and Bhutan. India antagonized Nepal by imposing an economic embargo in 2015 over an internal fight in that country regarding some elements in the new constitution that was being framed at the time. Since the embargo that debilitated Nepal's economy, ties between Kathmandu and New Delhi have never been the same. In the case of Sri Lanka, India's keep off policy following the LTT's assassination of former Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi in 1991 resulted in the entry of China into that country. This includes a 99-year lease in the Hambantota port that is strategically uncomfortable for New Delhi. Maldives has been a yo-yo for and against India, depending on the government in Malé. Right now, the Mohammad Muizzu government leans firmly towards China, causing consternation within India. The recent controversy over Lakshadweep Islands as an alternative to Maldives for Indian tourists highlighted these tensions. India is making attempts to persuade the government in Malé to change its perspective, but that is easier said than done. In Bhutan, India, which is considered its protector, was frowned upon for increasing tensions with China in the Doklam Tri-junction bordering the three countries. Bhutan is afraid of becoming a pawn and a casualty in India-China rivalry. It is gradually opening up to China to the detriment of India's strategic interests in the sensitive Siliguri corridor or the chicken's neck.